opening ceremony for the Winter Olympics in Italy happened, and I was happy to see that mezzo-soprano Cecilia Bartoli, one of my favorite vocalists, was involved in that. It was pretty cool. And also accompanying her was Lang Lang, the pianist.
Oh.
So pretty interesting.
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I never turned on my television, so.
Yeah, right. Well, I saw it on the internet. I never really watched TV, so, But it was pretty cool. She got to hear her sing. We haven't really heard from her on adult music ever, really. I don't know. She doesn't really make too many albums these days. I don't know what she's up to.
Well, at least they had some quality music as part of the ceremonies.
Yeah. Leave it to the Italians to come up with some good musical choices, at least if they're picking jazz or classical. If they're doing pop music, God help us all. Some of the worst pop music ever. Although they do have really good songs, but once they get into that techno kind of thing, forget about it.
No techno here on Adult Music, where we bring you music for the mature mind. This is episode 246. I'm your co-host, Russ.
And I'm your co-host, Mike.
I've got some thanks to send out. First of all, thanks to the MDG music label and the duo Gloss Arte. That's Juan Gonzalez Martinez on the trombones.
Yeah.
And Leah Suter on harpsichord and organ. And thank them for sharing our episode last week on all of their Facebook pages, where we featured their recording Mediterranean Melodies. It's a recording of early Baroque music for trombone, and we were really enchanted by that.
I had a little correspondence going, too, with Juan Gonzalez Martinez. Very interesting. He seems to be a genuinely good guy.
That's great.
Yeah. So thanks to them, for helping us out. They shared it far and wide, and we got a lot of downloads on that episode as well.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard last week's episode, go back and check that recording out at least. And before we get into new things, we've got a little bit of sad news again this week. So I'll have to get over to the piano again here. And we've got a passing in the classical world.
Yeah, and in the jazz world. So we have one of each this week.
Yeah.
Now, in the classical world, we lost Hungarian pianist and conductor Tamás Vasari. He died on February 5th at age 92.
Wow.
Yeah, he was one of the most recorded and influential Hungarians of his time and was renowned for his interpretations of Chopin and Liszt. He was a child prodigy who fled Hungary after the 1956 uprising and garnered international acclaim with his London debut in 1961 and recordings for Deutsche Grammophon that showcased his nuanced tone and poetic insight. And as a conductor, he led the Northern Sinfonia, the Bournemouth Sinfonietta, and the Hungarian Radio Symphony Orchestra. So rest in peace, a very long and highly musical life. Rest in peace, Tamás Vasari.
And on the jazz side, Ken Peplowski, American jazz clarinetist and tenor saxophonist, passed away unexpectedly on February 1st at the age of 66 aboard the Jazz Cruise in the Gulf of Mexico, where he had just performed the night before. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, he began his professional career as a child in polka bands. He played with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra and Benny Goodman's Final Ensemble, and over a 5-decade career, he recorded more than 70 albums as a leader and played on nearly 400 recordings as a sideman, playing with names like Hank Jones, Rosemary Clooney, Mel Torme, and Bill Charlap. 66 is a little bit young to go out, but at least he was doing what he loved still.
Doing what he loved. I often kind of dread the thought of passing away at my job, but if my job were music, I guess it would be okay. Well, it wouldn't be okay to pass away, but...
Well, maybe we can keep doing this when we get really old. That'll be kind of interesting.
I kind of am hoping for that, because what do you do when you get older? A lot of people around here are like, oh, what am I going to do now? I would have no problem being retired. I have loads of books I want to read. There's tons of music. Really, I'm not going to be bored.
I've been practicing for a while, so...
Okay, yeah. I'm ready for retirement. I could retire today.
Then we'd have more time to listen to all this great music.
Yeah, we might even do this every day if that happens.
We could do that.
I actually listen to this French podcast called En Piste. It's really a radio program, and they do this every day. I don't see how they do an hour and a half every day, but I doubt they're doing the engineering and picking the recordings and things like that. They just talk. But very enjoyable, by the way, if anyone's into classical music, wants to hear recent releases every day. Sometimes they go way back into the past, though, but mostly new stuff. They play the full movement
as
well, which is kind of nice.
All right, well, we've got an exciting program of music in this episode. As always, in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we'll discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. And if you don't see the full description, or if the recording list and links are hard to follow wherever you're listening to us now, come over and check us out on our host site, Podbean, podbean.com. Everything is easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe and tell a music-loving friend. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the music category recommendations, and that helps us grow our audience as well. Come and follow us on our Facebook page to get extra info and more new releases throughout the week. I put up a couple from Friday there. You can leave a message or comment on Facebook. We're over on X as well, where I post links to the new episodes. Our ID there is Adult Music Pod. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We'll be playing music samples as part of our discussion, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists.
Okay, so we're going to head to, we have our usual Baroque, then kind of middle period, and then contemporary lineup tonight.
All the bases covered.
All bases covered. Our first album is a Baroque album, music of Barbara Strozzi, called Virtuosissima Sirena. What a great language Italian is. Why couldn't we all just speak Italian? It's so nice. I love it. Virtuosissima Sirena, or virtuosic or very virtuosic Siren. Okay, not the siren that the fire engine makes, but the sirens who sing in the ocean. They're kind of like these mermaid-type creatures, I guess, okay, from the Odyssey. So she is the Virtuosissima Sirena. And the other Virtuosissima Sirena is going to be our soprano on this album, Laura Catrani. And she's accompanied here by the Accademia Dell'annunciata. Another great name, you know?
Yeah.
All these kind of religious sort of references here. And the musical director is Riccardo Doni. This is on the Arcana label, released on January 30th. Okay, now, the Accademia dell'Annunciata consists of Angelo Calvo on violin, Francesco Facchini, violin, Giulio Paduin, cello, Laura Lavecchia, the 14-course theorbo, Margherita Burattini on the arpa doppia, or double harp, and Riccardo Doni on the harpsichord. This album aims to create a faithful and affectionate portrait of 17th century Italy's greatest female composer, and really one of the Baroque era's greatest composers overall, I would say, at least the early Baroque, let's say, all right? The compositions on this album, a selection of cantatas and arias, reflects the variety of styles, approaches, and effects that run through her music, ranging from the intensely tragic, expressed on the model of the lament, to the brilliant, parodistic, and playful tone of the short, pithy arietas. Vocal affects, or emotions, are generated by texts as well as music, so we also have no less intense instrumental effects of the contemporary Sonata a Tre by Giovanni Legrenzi and Dario Castello. We'll hear them as well. This is a really great album, I thought. Let's start with track 1, Godere e Tacere. Kind of like that title, which kind of means something like enjoy and be quiet. Don't tell anyone after we do this thing here. This is an instrumental version with 2 violins and diminutions from the original for 2 sopranos and continuo. You got to wonder why we're not getting the 2 soprano version on this one, because we get something like that later. The 2 violins interlace beautifully here in the opening track. This is a Barbara Strozzi composition. One does wonder what 2 vocalists would sound like. Listen to this and imagine 2 vocalists, or don't, because the 2 violinists sound pretty great. Let's hear this. all right, we got to get out of there because there's no cadence coming. I was waiting for that cadence. So that went on. I got to tell you, though, I'm already feeling good hearing this track. I really like the mood of this. There's kind of like a sort of languidness to it, kind of a hot day sort of, moving through the heat sort of a feeling to it. I could say something else, but we are an adult podcast. I could say it, but I won't. Anyway, the overall sound is transparent due to the smallness of the ensemble, and that's appealing. There's a nice sudden change at 1 minute and 5 seconds or so to the harp in the continuo. There are attractive ensemble details in the playing that you'll notice if you take your ears off the violins for a moment. Not an easy thing to do because they're so appealing. At 2 minutes, a slower section begins with the violins playing in their lower range. There's a quick repeat of the opening to end the track on an upbeat note. Track 2, we get to hear Laura Catrani finally. This is L'amante segreto, so she gets a little intro there with that first track. This is for soprano, 2 violins, basso continuo, and violin parts are added by the performers. The poem is by an anonymous poet. The track opens with serene playing from the ensemble, and then the vocalist sings the words, "I just want to die." That's a great opening statement. You got to leave it to the Italians to know how to really grab your attention right away. So it's a surprise, especially given the musical setting. There are 2 violins that melodize between verses. Now, I want you to notice the vocal is going to start, and you're going to hear the words, well, you're going to hear the Italian words for "I just want to die." See if you can put this mood to that sentiment. Yeah, voglio morire, I just want to die. And she sounds pretty contented and resigned to that fact there. There's gorgeous singing by Laura Catrani here, both in her smooth and pleasant upper range and down low, both ranges of which Strozzi makes use of in her writing. At 2 minutes and 10 seconds, the piece goes into recitative writing. Of course, the reason the vocalist wants to die, instead of letting her weakness be discovered, is because her beloved is making her suffer by knowing of her passion and not responding. Okay, it's really his passion because the poet's writing this for a man, but we have a woman singing it here. All right, did we really need to hear that? We know why people want to die in Italian songs, because their love isn't being returned. Okay, it's such an Italian problem to have. The return to "Ma io voglio morire" at 4 minutes and 35 seconds or so has a bit more emotion to it, though this music never becomes hysterical. The singer is calm in her suffering. This refrain appears between different recitative sections. Despite the suffering disclosed in the lyrics, the music itself is pretty calm, if not contented, and it goes into 3/4 time for the end of the piece at around the 8th minute. There's lots of subtlety in it, in the performance as well as the writing, and it's a deeply satisfying piece. I recommend you hear it in full. Track 3, La Vendetta. Oh, everybody knows what this means, right? It's kind of like the Italian revenge. Soprano, 2 violins, and basso continuo. The poem is by Giulio Strozzi, who I guess was related to Barbara. I'm not really sure what the relationship is. But this starts with the words, "Revenge is a sweet thing." And you really can't say that Strozzi doesn't choose compelling texts for her music. This has a bounce to it and is fairly short. Again, I like Catrani's approach, as well as the creativity of the continuo, constantly changing textures and the level of bounce of the rhythm. I also love it when the time signature changes like that from 4/4 to 3/4 in Baroque music. It's really cool. All right, this sounds like she's just delighted by the idea of revenge. This really has a bit of a cognitive dissonance to it between the music and the words. We tend to think that Baroque sentiments are horribly outdated, but the line, "In vain are excuses and reasons to try to placate an outraged woman," seem to be true even today. Giulio Strozzi knew what was up, let me tell you, when he wrote these lyrics. Track 4, Giovanni Lagrenzi, La Savorgnana, a tre, Opus 2, number 18. That's 2 violins and a cello. This is an instrumental work, and it has a pleasant bounce to it. The cello speaks into the 2 violins' texture at times, but remains with the continuo for a good deal of the piece. So it kind of plays both sides, as it were. Let's hear a sample. All right, very enjoyable piece there. At 1 minute and 55 seconds, there's a big rhythm and tempo change sounding like a separate movement. The tempo gradually picks up and the section reaches a cadence. Then at 2 minutes and 52 seconds, we reach a new, freer section melodically. This kind of sounds like a multi-movement work that's all been squeezed into one track. The theorbo eventually sets a light rhythm and the violins accompany its theme. At around the 3 minute and 50-second mark, the tempo suddenly picks up again to a giddy level, and the piece ends with high energy. Really appealing piece. Track 5, back to Barbara Strozzi, Lagrime Mie, Lamento. This is for soprano and basso continuo. Poems by Pietro Dolfino, and this 10-minute work starts with a strong dissonance in the opening line that catches the ear right away. Now, Lagrime Mie, the first words mean my tears, but the first word is tears. Tears of mine, let's say. So keep that in mind and listen to this dissonance. Man. Okay, some great dissonances in some of those lines there. They just come up occasionally. It's not the last time we're going to hear a dissonance like that either. This vocalist is so distraught she can't even find a clean harmony. This is an expressive tactic, the Baroque idea of affect. This is putting the idea of the fier dolore, or fierce pain, across, and you feel it with your ears. Here, Lydia, who the singer adores, so it's a woman, so the singer's understood to be a man in the poem, is imprisoned by her stern father between 2 walls where the sun's rays can't reach her. What's worse, she's there because of the singer, and he can't bear the pain that he's caused her. Again, this is something that would only happen in Italy, really. There's a great chromatic line at around those words where the poet blames himself, or herself, I guess in this case. This piece is extremely expressive in its dissonance and chromaticism, and a very compelling listen. At 4 minutes and 38 seconds, some light moaning begins as the La in the title Lagrime Mie is given some melismatic treatment. The next section features 1 beat per syllable in contrast, and feels like a freeing release, given that the rhythm is moving more freely as well. This freeing rhythmic bounce comes in the section where the singer is welcoming death. Barbara Strozzi really had an interesting imagination when it came to setting text. No worries, though. Fate denies the singer death. The next section slows a bit as the singer accepts that wicked destiny thirsts only for his weeping, and the track ends with a more consonant singing of the opening line. Again, this is a very satisfying composition and performance. You know, this is the real difference between like German Lieder and Italian like songs, is that the Italian is going to kill himself because he can't get the woman, but the German just sort of gives up and goes on a trip or something. And he winds up dying at the end of natural causes or of his grief or whatever. Anyway, track 6, Appena il Sol, soprano and basso continuo. Like the previous track, this one is also soprano and basso continuo, but there are 4 instruments in the basso continuo, so it sounds like a full ensemble. The vocal here is bright, although once again, the text, again by Pietro Dolfino, is about an afflicted lover. And, you know, afflicted lovers make for expressive musical settings. They have a lot of strong feelings. The title of the work references the rising of the sun, and the lover, at around 2 minutes and 30 seconds, asks the gods to ensure his beloved will say yes to him before the sun sets. It's a great moment because the rhythm changes to 3/4 there. Let me see if I can get the moment the rhythm changes in a sample, so you'll hear this in 4/4 first, and then we'll hear the change to 3/4 if I've done this correctly. Let's find out. Okay, well, it's kind of hard to pick up on that sample, but if you listen to the whole track, it'll really strike you. At 4 minutes and 20 seconds, the rhythm stops and we get a recitative in which the poet explains that the lover, walking along the stream, his steps tuned to his suffering, he falls into the water and drowns. This moment is given an upbeat setting by Strozzi. So is it a happy ending? Maybe for a suffering lover who isn't going to get the love he wants, it is. I guess she didn't say yes to him before the sun set that day. Oh well. Track 7, Costume de Grandi, soprano, 2 violins, and basso continuo. The poem is by Giulio Strozzi, relation to Barbara Strozzi in some way. The poem is a bit of wisdom that explains that lovers seize pleasure and then are on to the next pleasure. I like this part where Catrani sings S'inganna e si godi. They cheat and enjoy it. Oh, who says these songs are old-fashioned? I don't understand. Anyway, let's listen. I like the way that rhythm kind of has this sort of a dancing kind of like light butterfly kind of quality to it. Like this person is just floating around from lover to lover, and they just they cheat and they enjoy it. I also like the way this work keeps changing between burbling continuo in the recitative to the dancey rhythm in the choruses. Track 8, a composer I really like, Dario Castello, Sonata Duodecima a Tre. This is 2 sopranos, trombone, or violetta. And this is going to be the violetta, I guess. This starts in a lively manner with a repeated note played to a vigorous rhythmic line. Now let's sample the opening. The piece plays out in 3 sections, which I guess would be individual movements. They're all pretty short, but they're all on one track here. At 1 minute and 25 seconds, a quieter, more sustained section begins. At 2 minutes, another vigorous line begins, but quickly stretches out to more sustained melodies. The arpa doppia takes over with its gentle tone to bring the slower interlude to an end. Then the 2 violins are in for a vigorous section. The cello gets a solo line at the 4-minute mark, and I want to sample that too, because we haven't heard the solo cello here. I really liked that settling into the cadence there. Really kind of a moody solo. It's almost vocal sounding, in fact, in its lamenting tone. One of the violins then solos with the harp commenting. Very attractive and rather surprising writing here by Dario Castello. The piece eventually comes to its end without a full cadence, and it's one last surprise. Track 9, Che si può fare, a cantata for soprano, 2 violins, and basso continuo. The continuo starts with a chromatic descent, which Theorbo starts playing over. This is not a good sign for the protagonist, because that kind of bass line symbolizes death, though here it may merely be suffering, or maybe that's worse, who knows. I like the rising line that the words of the title, Che si può fare, or what can one do, are given. Let's listen to the vocal. And once again, that rising Che si può fare. It's a great hook by Barbara Strozzi. She's got a lot of good hooks in her songs. The 2 violins get an interlude starting at around 2 minutes and 15 seconds, ushering in the vocalist for the next verse, and in fact playing between each verse. At 4 minutes and 18 seconds, the trudge of the rhythm stops, and a recitative is delivered. In it, the singer explains that that's how it is with cruel destiny. Tyrannous fate condemns the innocent. I really liked the attractive melisma in the 8th minute on the word anima. The piece, once again, ending with a rather downcast text, has upbeat music that, again, surprisingly, doesn't give us a full cadence, though it ends on a tonic note. And track 10, Tradimento, for soprano and basso continuo. And here we get an upbeat setting, once again, of the word tradimento, or betrayal. The rhythm then switches to a swaying 3/4 for the words love and hope want to make me a prisoner. Oh, let's hear it. Strozzi is nothing if not compelling as a composer. This fairly brief piece follows that upbeat pattern to 3/4 swaying rhythm throughout. The text says at the end, before the final tradimento, è periglioso ogni momento. every moment is dangerous. Indeed it is when you're listening to a Barbara Strozzi composition. A few weeks ago I mentioned that Zelenko was one of the more original composers of the Baroque era, but I have to say Barbara Strozzi has to be included in that assessment. These works are so inventive as to be surprising in many ways, not just in tone, but also in the way the rhythms change and in what emotion she decides to bring out of the text. That's also the case with the two instrumental works, one by Giovanni Lagrenzi and one by Dario Castello. I liked everything about this album. First, Laura Catrani's vocal quality is pleasing throughout her range. She has a smooth tone with little to no vibrato in it and is sensitive enough to lean into certain of Strozzi's written notes to express the emotion. This is a singer with a good understanding of what the music is expressing and how to put that expression across. The ensemble itself is light-sounding with a continuo section that keeps the ear engaged by continuously varying the timbre. This might be the best Barbara Strozzi program I've heard, really. It's such compelling music, and each piece has different subtleties to draw out the emotional quality. A compelling and highly satisfying listen from start to finish. I think this one's going into the CD collection once I can afford it.
We've heard works by Barbara Strozzi before on the podcast, but I don't think a whole recording.
Right.
And some of the compositional elements I remember are here too. Sudden changes without transitions, unexpected chromaticism, and using falling pitches to emphasize sad or grieving text passages. The lyrical content here is very interesting, a lot of dramatic love poems, and one poem, it seems, by her father included as well.
Giulio Strozzi's her father.
Right.
Huh? Okay, I didn't know who he was. I didn't want to say.
Laura Catrani's voice is expressive, but not overpowering, with subtle interpretations and a great sense of pitch. The instrumentation and performance by Accademia Dell'annunciata was well balanced, and I liked having the instrumental numbers to break up the vocal program a bit, and the sonics are really great from Arcana as well. So an enjoyable and enlightening listen.
Enlightening, I think so too. Yeah, Giulio Strozzi was her father. I just looked this up. Pretty interesting.
I think the notes mention he was probably her father. I guess there's
probably her father.
Some
Okay.
unknown elements in there, but
aren't there always when it comes to Italians? Anyway, next album, Schumann and Moscheles, 1851 Sonatas. Pretty interesting concept there. And this is by one of our favorite duos, Stephen Isserlis on cello, Connie Shih on piano. This is on the Hyperion label, released also on January 30th. Stephen Isserlis's always excellent and personable booklet notes begin, 1851, they don't make years like that anymore. In a time of relative peace for Europe, the arts were evolving in all sorts of dynamic ways, and one of the ways was the exhibition of the new Erard piano at the Great Exhibition of the Works of Industry of All Nations held in London in 1851, which is the theme of this album. It is such a piano that is used on this recording, so we're hearing Connie Shih playing an 1851 Erard piano. The works all revolve around a circle of three tight-knit friends, Schumann, Moscheles, and Ferdinand David. Hovering over their relationship and missing on this recording because he had died by this time was Felix Mendelssohn. So he's kind of also related to the three compositions on this album, despite the fact that he was already dead in 1851. Tracks 1 through 4, Robert Schumann, arranged by Stephen Isserlis, Violin Sonata No. 2 in D minor, Opus 121. I think Robert Schumann has cello sonatas, but Isserlis has decided to arrange Schumann's second violin sonata for the cello for this recording. This was written after a suggestion by violinist Ferdinand David, who's also going to appear on this album. It's probably the most monumental of Schumann's chamber music masterpieces. In fact, if you want to hear the violin version, there was a highly regarded recording of it just last year on Hyperion by Alina Ibragimova and I believe Cedric Tiberghian. But here we're hearing a cello version. Isserlis suggests that the sonata may have been written as a memorial to Mendelssohn. Pretty interesting. The work begins with a motif taken from the musical letters of David's name, that's Ferdinand David. The sonata was premiered by David's student Joseph Joachim, famous for his partnership with Brahms in many duo recitals and dedications of violin compositions. Joseph Joachim gave the first performance of this work with Clara Schumann at the piano. Boy, that would have been a concert to be at, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Track 1, the first movement, Ziemlich langsam, moving to lebhaft. Clarity of sound on this made me jump. The sound is very present and has a warm, in-the-room quality. The opening theme after the introduction is quietly and sensitively played by Isserlis, and one of the reasons we just love him is because of his multi-layered sort of arsenal of attacks that he could make on the instrument. A theme then bursts out at around the 1 minute and 20-second mark with the cello in its throaty lower end, and complete with Isserlis' fantastic tone. We have to hear this. Here we go. Okay, I'm not sure that cadence is coming either, so let's get out of there. While the piano plays in the forte dynamic range, its Erard quality comes out. It doesn't ring out like a modern piano, of course. It sounds smaller, but matches the cello's dynamic level perfectly, at least as recorded here. Isserlis has a gift with making melodies sing. Well, a lot of cellists do, of course, but Isserlis has something special about his tone and phrasing, probably tied to his timing. The piano sounds in more forte sections like it's recorded close up, but it doesn't intrude. Connie Shih sounds at home on the instrument. I wonder how often she's played on a period piano of this type. The middle development section comes across as lyrical in the cello as well, as it melodically wanders, guided by the piano into new keys. It sounds like the cello is singing through a changing harmonic landscape. The piece has a darkness to it that Isserlis accentuates in his booklet notes, and it's certainly there, but for me, the lyrical moments lift this feeling off of me. The music gets really agitated and tightly constricted by the changing harmony in the 7th minute. It's been building up to that for some time. After this, it quiets down in a sort of lament, and eventually regains its footing, falling in line with the ending of the opening section. The movement ends somberly, and we move on to track 2, the second movement, Sehr lebhaft. The piano opens this, and you can hear the tonal quality of the Erard, thinner compared to a modern piano, but with short yet ample sustain. The cello hews out the main theme with the piano's emphatic chords sounding. Let's hear the opening. A second theme is played again quietly in the cello after the 1 minute mark. Then the aggressive opening returns. All of this, from the second quiet theme on, is heard again, bringing the piece to a cadence as it hammers out its final chord. From the 3 minute and 36-second mark, we hear the chorale Gelobet seist du. And that's going to be important in the third movement, which is track 3, Leise Einfacht. The chorale Gelobet seist du, which we heard in the previous movement, provides the main theme of this movement, which then goes into variations on it. We hear it gently strummed out of the cello as if it were a guitar. The piano adds to the effect with gently played chords. Again, Isserlis has such presence that his phrasing and the light bends he gives to the thematic notes registers with deep emotion, despite the lightness of the playing. The first theme is gently bowed out over arpeggiated piano lines. The second theme increases the volume and is played with legato double-stopped chords. It's beautifully played, and I'd like to sample this. The energy then picks up as the piano propels the rhythm via quick, repeated note phrases. There's a nice variation at around the 4-minute mark, featuring the cello's quietly played theme over extended, sprinkled arpeggios in the piano. The movement ends with a brief line played in the cello's harmonics. Track 4, the fourth and final movement, Bewegt. A heavy-toned melodic theme begins this movement in the cello. Oh, those crazy romantics never reaching that cadence. Though the rhythm is a bit troubled and there's a storminess to the theme, like it's being blown around, it sounds stable, like it's found its feet. This movement is a rondo. The second departure from the theme gets agitated, but as the harmony straightens out and the movement returns to the theme, the feeling of stability returns. The third time we hear the theme, however, it's agitated. The next departure has more of a downcast, searching quality to it. The next few departures and returns remain on the agitated side. The final thematic statement arrives with a feeling of triumph. It darkens, but digs itself out for a cadence that seeks the sunlight. So I guess it ends on a positive note, despite being a pretty dark piece. Track 5, Ferdinand David, arranged by Stephen Isserlis, Romanze, number 4 of 5 in his Salonstück, Opus 28. This is a highly melodic piece with a gentle accompaniment on the piano. I'm guessing it's originally for the violin, being that David was a violinist. Isserlis brings some shading to his constantly singing lines as he plays and applies it expertly. I love the sustained note Isserlis plays at the end of that sample. If you listen on, you can hear more of Isserlis' shading of tone after the 2-minute and 20-second mark. All right, tracks 6 through 9, the other big piece on this album, Ignaz Moscheles, Cello Sonata in E major, Opus 121. This one is actually written for the cello. The 6th track is the first movement, Allegro, Espressivo e Appassionato. The cello starts in a slower range and rises up. The piano gets to play the theme as well. This has a much more buoyant feeling than the darker Schumann work, so I guess it's kind of the yin to Schumann's yang, or the opposite of that. I don't know, but let's hear it. Yeah, really appealing, and we can just keep listening, can't we? It has some attractive melodies in it. At the 50-second mark, the music gets agitated, and Connie's Shih really hammers at the Orchid piano. You can hear its limitations here. In general, though, it has a sweet, melodically pleasing sound. Isserlis gets plenty of attractive melodies to play in this highly appealing movement. Connie's Shih has some impressive figuration to play as well, and the cello blends well with this piano. I don't think the Orchid piano is capable of overpowering the cello, to be honest. Shih sometimes plays at aggressive volume, and the cello is always fully present in timbre. In the fourth movement, the development section comes in, and it progresses with different dynamics as well as key areas. I like when the piano gets the theme, and the cello has to rigorously accompany, as at the 5-minute and 30-second mark. Isserlis makes a lot of noise while remaining discreet in tone. By the 7-minute and 20-second mark, the charming opening theme is back, sweetly played in the piano, while the cello vigorously accompanies. I like the entire texture in the coda at around 8 minutes and 30 seconds, the piano in its high end playing figures, and the cello also with a quiet figure. The music suddenly crescendos for the ending. Track 7, the second movement, Scherzo ballabile, or danceable, allegretto quasi allegro. The theme in the solo cello at the opening is folk-like. The piano answers with a similar folk-like theme, then they play together. So there's a little spice to this. Let's hear it. Let's come out of that there. At 1 minute and 55 seconds, another folk-like theme, this time in more of a song form, appears. The opening theme then returns, and then at the 4-minute and 8-second mark, a coda seems to start, featuring a variation on the opening melody, with the piano playing a lot of the melody. The piano has the lead here until about the 4-minute and 53-second mark, when the cello finally gets the melody again. The movement ends tranquilly. Track 8, the third movement, Ballade in Böhmische Weise, Andantino. The cello plays melodically in the higher register of his instrument, again in folk-like style, with a minimum of vibrato, as the piano gently accompanies. The movement eventually takes on a dancing rhythm at around the 2-minute and 15-second mark, featuring light figuration from the piano. The music loses its dance rhythm and starts stretching out on the themes. The rhythm is back at 4 minutes and 5 seconds in what is a new variation on the theme. There's a lot of pushing and pulling of the theme in this movement, from strict dancing rhythm to taffy-like expanding of the melody. The final variation sounds slow, with a bit of world weariness in the tone from Isserlis. The movement ends gently. Track 9, Allegro vivace ma non troppo. The fourth movement starts boldly. Let's hear it. As we head towards something that sounds like it might be a cadence, we'll move on. The material has a rushing quality to it, as you heard. The tempo is lively as indicated in the tempo marking. There's a slower, more lyrical theme at 1 minute and 55 seconds in the cello that brightens up as it's repeated. The movement continues from here in upbeat fashion with occasional lulls in the lively energy that always wind up bursting back into life. I particularly liked the aggressive section at around the 5-minute mark, where the harmony seems to become stuck in the piano for a moment, then aggressively pulls itself forward with the help of the cello. This leads to a tranquil moment just before the end, which builds up via a crescendo accelerando to a bold, positive ending. This is an enjoyable piece overall, and really a real discovery. Track 10, Robert Schumann, Sänger's Trost, or The Poet's Comfort, number 1 from his Fünf Lieder und Gesänge, opus 127, so this is a pretty late work. So we're back to Schumann here with a song melody. We're missing the words, but here the phrasing is so beautifully done that the song is enjoyable without the text. And plus it's a cello, so what's not to like? The song is through composed with Isserlis melodizing all the way. Track 11, Johann Sebastian Bach and Charles Gounod, Ave Maria Meditation. And this features the Gesualdo 6 as a choir on it. This is a surprise, with the Gesualdo 6 singing a text. We usually don't hear this. First, the cello comes in with the famous melody over Bach's Prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavier, which, Gounod put there. Isserlis plays the entire melody first. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the Gesualdo 6 are in, but with a very subtle timbral change. They make a ghostly sound and become more present as the piece goes on, though they're never in front. Let's catch them behind the cello melody at around the 3 minute and 42 second mark, as that's where there's a crescendo. Okay, now if you're saying, I didn't hear any choir in there, you need to listen closely. They're really just providing texture. They don't really come out to the front. Track 12 is the same piece again, the Méditation sur le premier prélude de piano de J.S. Bach. And this time there are no choral vocals. This is the standard version of it, although it's usually sung, and here we have the cello playing the vocal line. I'll let you sample this famous piece for yourself. Suffice to say that Isserlis sings this melody beautifully, and the prelude sounds appealing on the Erard piano. You'll rarely hear a better played performance of this work, even though it's ubiquitous. Predictably, this is a richly rewarding set of performances in a creatively programmed recital. I'd like to say that the Erard piano is the star of the show, but how can that be when you have Stephen Isserlis on cello? He has such a beautiful timbre and sense of phrasing that your ear inevitably gravitates to him, even when he's accompanying. He even makes that figuration interesting. That's not to say that Connie Shih remains in the background. She makes the most of her solo moments, particularly in the Moscheles cello sonata, which has interesting parts for both performers. The Ferdinand David romanza and Schumann's Sänger's Trost are both beautifully played, with Isserlis very much in the lead role, and he sings the famous Gounod melody over Bach's Prelude in C major beautifully in the two versions of that work. He sings it on the cello, of course, via his bow. The appearance of the Gesualdo 6 on track 11 was a nice surprise, even if they remain in the background, providing subtle timbral interest. Isserlis's booklet notes only make this a more desirable album to own. Beautiful playing all around, but particularly on the cello.
I always expect to be impressed by Stephen Isserlis, and this recording is no exception. I enjoyed all the works, You can't go wrong in 1851 for romantic material that sounds fabulous on the cello, whether it was specifically written for it or not. Schumann's Violin Sonata sounds great on cello, and why not? Last week we heard an oboe work played an octave down on bassoon, so why not a violin work on cello? Later, listening to the Moscheles work, it became more obvious that it goes right away for the lower register sounds that only the cello can produce, and it was the first time hearing that work for me. It has some technically challenging passages that Isserlis played with great flair. A great playing and synchronicity from Connie, Shih throughout, too. The voices of the Gesualdo Six are so subtle that I wanted to hear more of them rather than hear the last track.
Yeah, we are big fans of the Gesualdo Six here on Adult Music.
Yeah, but that added a little bit of variety to the recording, and as usual, well-written and insightful album notes from Mr. Isserlis.
Yeah, he's a great writer. He's written a few books as well, and they're worth reading just because he's got this really personable style of writing. He doesn't really sound like an academic, and he sounds like a real person, too, which is a little unusual in the classical music world. Those people have spent a lot of times in practice rooms, and like a lot of tech people, have lost the ability to communicate properly. Anyway, moving on. We have a delightful surprise next in the contemporary category. You might think that's a bit unusual, but here we go. The trio Barclay, Sean Kennard on piano, Dennis Kim on violin, and Jonah Kim on cello, are featured on their album Beyond the Pacific, and this is on the Orchid Classics label, released again on January 30th. We're just going to get right into the music. This album features piano trios by 3 American composers, none of which I've ever heard of before, so this is a surprise for me. And boy, what a melodic treat all of this was.
Yeah, all instantly likable and listenable.
Yeah. So the first piece, tracks 1 through 4, are Sheridan Seyfried's Piano Trio No. 1, composed in 2021. Seyfried is from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, USA. Born in 1984. Oh, these people are all younger than us. Well, one of them's older. We're going backwards in time here, so he's the youngest on the album. Now, he says about this work, each movement embodies a different mood and characteristic, together creating an overarching emotional storyline. Track 1, the first movement, Moderato. Dark-hued intensity is the mood, yearning, or even grief. The music eventually gets ominous. And this movement starts with big but pleasant-sounding chords. The recording quality is exceptionally clean. The strings come in after a while with the theme first heard in the piano's chords. The opening reminds me a bit of the Chopin prelude that's all chords, you know, the one that starts Barry Manilow's Could It Be Magic? That one. I forget the key that it's in. After this opening theme, the music grows quiet, and we get some sensitive tone from all 3 players, with the piano falling into a pulsing, repeated note to provide rhythm. In the second minute, the cello has the melody to itself, and at the 3-minute mark, it hands off to the solo violin. They then dovetail melodies. The theme is then back. This is some really beautiful composing here, and lovely playing, too. Let's hear a sample. Now, this music, it's got a lot of romantic qualities to it, but formally, it really sounds almost classical because we hear a lot of cadences, which is a little unusual. Romantic composers are often trying to avoid cadences. So it's got like a nice sense of structure to it. And yet, there's a lot of romantic emotion in it. What we heard there, by the way, was the return to the opening theme. So we actually heard the first theme that we heard at the beginning of the movement there, too. At the 5-minute and 10-second mark, a coda begins once the opening theme ends. There's a buildup of tension via a repeating upward bass line at the end that suddenly resolves via a quiet ending phrase. Track 2, the second movement, Energico. Confident but whimsical, moving to a rustic, heavy sort of dance, according to the notes. The movement has a playful introduction followed by an energetic theme, and I want to skip ahead to the theme. This is about just 15 seconds in. We'll often hear contemporary composers composing in, say, a romantic style, but this almost sounds like it goes back to Haydn in its kind of compactness. It's really kind of nice to hear a contemporary take on those ideas, let's say, or that sort of structure. The material moves toward a pause at about 1 minute and 30 seconds, then a rippling figure bursts out and again leads to a pause. The rustic dance starts at around the 1 minute and 50 second mark. Each section here begins after the previous section dwindles to silence. The dance maintains its momentum, the trio Barclay keeping everything moving and upbeat. By the 4th minute, the dance has gained in aggression. At 4 minutes and 39 seconds, there's a sudden downshift, and the opening theme sounds gently once again. The movement ends mischievously with a quick figure and a quiet cadence. Track 3, Lento Espressivo. This is a chorale. It's heartfelt and impassioned, according to the notes. The chords that open the work have some warmth in their light vibrato in the strings. There's some beautiful melodizing in this movement. Let's hear the cello's solo turn at around the 1 minute and 35 second mark. Really beautiful writing there, and sensitive playing, too, from the trio Barclay. This is a really gorgeous movement. At the 3 minute mark, there's another cello-led theme, this one with more flow to it. The violin comes in and takes it over with the piano playing it in accompaniment as well. A buildup of tension leads to a repeat of the more melodic theme, only more dramatically stated this time. The piano then does a lightly played pencil sketch version of it just after the 5 minute mark. There are a lot of heartfelt gestures in this movement, and heartfelt really is the operating word here. You rarely hear a contemporary composition with this kind of warmth to it. The theme sort of evaporates through a decrescendo and diminuendo, then vibratoless chords are played in the strings, with the piano providing block chords in accompaniment. The piano ends the movement. Track 4 is the final movement, Vivace, pure joy and spirit, and it does indeed start in high spirits. Seyfried has a good ear for appealing melodies, and this work is full of them, not least this movement. The melody veers off into new material, then returns at 1 minute and 46 seconds. A slowing of the material will lead to a brief pause, then the music will continue on in high spirits at full speed. At 3 minutes and 55 seconds, there's a more cautious build-up back to the opening tempo for the work's finale and final cadence, which reaches a joyous high. Tracks 5 through 7. John Wineglass's work, Piano Trio No. 2, nicknamed Orcas Island, The Rose of the San Juan Islands, and this was composed in 2024. Wineglass was born in Washington, D.C. in 1973, so he's a little closer to our age group. Orcas Island is the largest of the San Juan Islands in the Pacific Northwest. Track 5, first movement, is named Sea of Islands. According to the notes, this starts with a brooding 7/4 pattern. The opening motif reflects Wineglass's first aerial view of the islands stretching toward British Columbia in Canada. The opening has a rhythmically mobile feeling to it. I don't really hear this as brooding, though. The violin plays over that. It's appealing and pretty unique for a piano trio. Let's hear this texture at the opening. Yeah, pretty cool. Got a really compelling rhythm there. The agitated rhythm continues throughout and is especially attractive after the 2-minute mark when the two string instruments take over and the piano plays the theme. There's a sudden freer sounding arpeggiated set of lines in the three instruments for a moment, then the opening rhythm is back around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. Just before the 5-minute mark, a more lyrical, romantic sounding version of the theme is heard, with flowing arpeggios in the accompaniment. I like the way the opening rhythm simply reasserts itself when these contrasting sections end. At around the 6-minute and 45-second mark, the cello gets a fairly histrionic moment, with violin and piano alternating in accompanying and assisting the harmony. The more romantic version of the melody is back at the end and brings the piece to an end on a highly elaborated, stretched-out final cadence. We move to the second movement, Quiet Sunsets, track 6. This captures the luminous calm of Orca Island's skies, according to the composer. A lively section recalls a hike up Mount Constitution in Moran State Park, the highest point in the San Juan Islands. The movement starts with very quiet, high glissandoing harmonics in the violin. The piano comes in its high end, too. The entire opening has a fragile quality to it and unfolds into a fuller theme and louder dynamic, though it's still played piano. Let's hear this. Really wish I could play the whole movement. It's really gorgeous. Yeah. At 1 minute and 20 seconds, we hear a more defined theme, and again, I have to say, Wineglass has a good sense of melody. It's easy to get comfortable with his themes, as it was in the Seyfried piece as well. There's some counter melody at 2 minutes and 30 seconds that comes together and forms a warmer, solid chord sound as the piano accompanies with figures. There are some attractive changes of section where one theme seems to suddenly smoothly emerge out of another. It's a movement that's pleasing to the ear. It ends with forte block chords in the piano and themes in the strings. Track 7, the third and final movement, Do Bay's Cove. Inspired by the atmospheric shoreline community on the island's southeastern edge, the final sustained of the previous movement never dies out, and we go directly into this third and final movement with a lightly propulsive rhythm in the piano that the strings glide over, playing their themes. This mixes into a new rhythmic pattern in the strings, with each taking turns in accompaniment and thematic playing. We're then back to the opening theme. A quarter note rhythm is established in the piano via chords just before the 3-minute mark. The movement goes by like a set of variations without any one of them acting as the original theme. After the 4-minute mark, the music has returned to its opening serenity as the piano sets a romantic accompanimental rhythm and the cello plays the theme while the violin engages in arabesques. The piece ends tranquilly with this theme and rhythm. Tracks 8 through 11 are composition by Michael Fine, born in New York in 1950, so he's older than us. This is his piano trio number 2, subtitled California, also composed in 2024. The piece is both a reminiscence of Fine's many trips to California with his New Yorker's biases, and a fantasy of the fascinating multicultural work of California state. Track 8, the first movement, Allegro Ritmico. He says this has Hispanic overtones. I was kind of not really able to pick those out, to be honest. This starts with a unison harmony on a pretty active theme. Harmony eventually fills in around it. The theme expands into, once again, an attractive melody. This album is full of attractive melodies, really. The theme is fairly lively, and Fine has something in common with the other two composers on this album. He likes decelerando into the next theme, which he does in this movement. The melody starts moving into other keys in the middle section, breaking up somewhat as in a traditional classical sonata. Fine also combines the instruments in stimulating ways, passing themes around and coming up with appealing accompanying lines. Yeah, getting a bit dissonant in there, a little building drama. At the 4-minute and 40-second mark or so, the music quietens and slows. The approach to the theme's return at the end has a dusky quality to it and is very pretty. The theme is back with a quick repeat to end the movement. This is a compact, well-composed movement. Track 9 is the second movement, Adagio. This and the next movement are meditations on natural beauty and our place in the natural world. This movement is inspired by California's long mountain vistas. The opening has a heaviness to it in that it feels like the harmony makes an effort to move, appropriate to mountains. Okay, so Michael Fine has some drama going in this work. A sort of march feel to the rhythm briefly comes out and returns from time to time in the piano accompaniment around the 2-minute mark. The piano lets go and arpeggiates in a free manner as the cello and soprano are engaged in continuous countermelodic playing. At 4 minutes and 25 seconds, we hear what is the harshest harmony on the album so far, but it's just a dramatic moment and clears into more sensitive wisps of melody. The tempo slows for counter-melodic playing and the strings toward the end, a lovely moment. The piano is then back in to bring the movement to a tranquil close. Track 10, the third movement, Adagio sostenuto, inspired by the slow roll of the C. This movement is pretty brief at under 3 minutes. The roll of the C is slow indeed here. It's got motion, but it feels on the heavy side, like the previous movement, only with a curvier melodic quality to it. It suddenly quiets at around 45 seconds with strings reaching quietly upward, and that's why that sample went out so fast, then reaches mezzo forte for the next theme. The violin gets some quasi-soaring lines at 1 minute and 40 seconds or so, bringing some passion to the score momentarily. This quality is maintained to the end, which is upon us before we know it, and then we're on to the fourth and final movement, Allegretto, on track 11. This brings back some of the flair, joy, and energy of the first movement. Attractive pizzicati in the cello and staccato in the piano set the mood and rhythm as the violin melodizes. The pizzicati and staccato repeated notes feature throughout, being traded between the piano and cello, although the cello and violin will occasionally play in unison harmony. Textures get complicated at times as each of the three instruments gets its own melodic line. The piano emerges with a brief solo at 2 minutes and 5 seconds, with the violin and cello joining in to the theme he sets shortly afterwards. The uplifting opening theme is back in the last 30 seconds of the movement, stretching upward in the violin for an uplifting ending to the work and the album. 3 composers, 3 works, and an ensemble of 3. There are threes all over this album, and attractive melodies in every movement too. That last fact alone should recommend it to listeners who may be feeling timid about contemporary music. It's all a comfortable listen, and all 3 composers managed to come up with immediately appealing melodies. Despite there being 3 composers, the 3 works are all written in a similar compact melodic style, with appealing orchestration between the 3 instruments, which are frequently recombined into enticing patterns. I compared it to the classical era, the music of Haydn and Mozart, in the compactness of the themes and the shape of the movements. Trio Barclay sounds committed to the music, giving each work a rhythmic impetus that conveys the various moods, most of them on the more cheerful side. Beautiful balance within the ensemble too, and a recording with great clarity. These are 3 works that are easy to enjoy on the surface and will repay repeated listenings just so you can bask in the inventive orchestration. Nothing not to like on this album of contemporary music, unless you're adamantly avant-garde.
Yeah, 3 contemporary piano trios that are all accessible and easy to listen to. The compositional approaches are familiar, and all 3 works take the listener through a variety of moods. My favorite of the 3 is the first, the Seyfried. In the first movement, I liked that romantic character and the phrasing of the lines, and I really enjoyed the a prayer-like chorale of the third movement. Yeah,
that was my favorite movement on the album, probably. I like that one, too.
And the varied use of the trio instrumentation throughout was interesting. The other 2 were equally enjoyable. I like this whole recording, and I also really enjoyed the composer's descriptions in the album notes. I found them spot on. They described exactly what I was hearing, and so I felt like they were conveying the emotions they wanted to carry through the music. Trio Barclay plays expressively and with enjoyable phrasing throughout the recording, and as you mentioned, the sonics on the recording are clear with a good balance of instruments, and I'll probably be going back to listen to this one again soon.
Yeah, I like this one too. I may have to go back and hear it again myself.
Yeah. All right, over to the jazz side. We're going to start out on A.MA Records with the Max Kochetov Quartet, Foolin' Myself. This came out on January 30th, and thanks to Antonio Martino at A.MA Records for sending this one to me early with the press release information. Saxophonist Max Kochetov was born in Kiev, Ukraine in 1979. He started to learn accordion and clarinet in music school from age 6 and started to play saxophone at age 9. He was a student of saxophone in the Kiev State Music College R.M. Gliera. He studied and performed in Germany and also played in France. In 2006, he moved to Belgrade, Serbia. In 2010, he became the lead alto saxophonist in the Big Band of Radio Television of Serbia, RTS. Foolin' Myself here is his second album release on A.MA Records, a follow-up to his 2022 album, Altered Feelings. On this recording, Max Kochetov on the soprano saxophone exclusively, Katarina Kochetova on the piano, Hugo Loff on bass, Milos Grubantinits on drums, Fabrizio Basso on trumpet on a couple tracks, Ivan Radivojevic on trumpet as well, he's a Serbian, and the great Alex Sipiagin on flugelhorn on a couple tracks, another guest, Samuel Blazer on trombone on 2 tracks, and we heard his recording last year, Reverie. That was back in our episode 203, Harmonic Haze, in March. All songs are composed by Max Kochetov, produced by A.MA Records, co-producers Ivan Uzelak and Max Kochetov, recorded by Daniel Yukovitz at FNS Studio on the 4th and 5th of October 2025, mixed and mastered by Ivan Uzelak and Max Kochetov. And the album gets started and also finishes up in a similar way with a short little piece just called Intro. This is about 20 seconds. There's just an 8-measure phrase sounding like the old days of swing, and the production quality makes it sound like an old scratchy 78 record. Let's take a listen. And that's it. Track 2 is Tetra, and now we'll teleport into the 21st century for this tune, modern and modal. A straight and clicky beat from Grubantinits gets going on the 8-measure intro. It's got an overall ABA structure of 16-measure sections. Fabrizio Bosso joins in here, and on the A sections, short clipped unison phrases in the horns and bass build up anticipation. The piano rolls it into the heavier B section where the horns split into harmonized lines and the bass gets a more driving roll. Let's check this one out. After the final A section, Kochetov is up first for a solo, so let's check out his playing on this one. to get that climax in there. I like how he built up from shorter phrases into the high bursting ending. Bosso is next, and he's as playful as ever with a lot of high-reaching lines. It's a great solo, but I'll leave you to check that out on your own on this one. Otherwise, I'll be sampling everything on this album, and we'll hear one of his solos later on. Track 3 is Fusion Flow. Alex Sipiagin joins in for this one. It's a really nice tune. A chilled-out 5/4 groove with an ostinato sets the mood on the intro. Little flutters from the horns sound like birds flying through a tropical paradise. The melody has smooth unison phrases that split into harmony on the 6th measure. After the first 8 measures, the next 4 are in 4/4 time. Then it's back to 5/4 for a 4-measure interlude with sax flutters before the pattern repeats. Go around again. Sipiagin solos first, so let's check out his playing on this tune. Very nice, and the 4/4 section there works as a transition to Kochetov's solo. We hear the melody sections once more and a little extended ending, a very peaceful sounding tune. Track 4 is Karaoke, and Samuel Blazer joins in on trombone here. This one has some more underlying angst to it, especially compared to the previous tune. You hear that in Kochetov's piano chords on the intro. Kochetov starts the melody in a soft flowing way, getting joined by Blazer. The first 2 phrases seem to be 11 measures. The menacing piano brings in the next section that has some cool low trombone notes that drop down. It's a long melody, so we'll just catch the first part of it in a sample. Kochetov solos first, working up a lot of excitement on the piano, as does Kochetov. On this one, let's check out Blazer's trombone solo. And a shorter final melody section from there finishes up the tune. Track 5 is Sun. Sipyagan is back for this one. This tune has a lot of change-ups in feel. It starts kind of sleepily in a very slow 4. Gorbatinets adds rim clicks and other fills that add interest. Let's hear this first section get started. About a minute and a half in, it switches up to a faster swing section with walking bass. A rubato solo piano interlude takes it to a new Latin-sounding 6-beat section. There's a lot of interesting horn interaction, and Kochetov gets to improvise over this new feel, and then Sipyagan. Let's hear Kochetov's piano solo on this song. And the horns are back, working up to another 4/4 swinging melody section and a sudden soft ending. Track 6 is Mood, and Ivan Radivoyevitz is on trumpet for this one. This one builds up a lot of anticipation. There's a 16-measure intro with some cool bass work from Hugo Loff playing pulsing figures, but also joining in on lines with the piano that continue on between the horn melody phrases. That has a 16-measure light-hearted section, and then a more forceful section where Gorbatinets cranks out the drum energy. That's 12 measures with an extra 2 beats at the end for a drum crack. Let's check it out. it goes around again, and then Kochetov is up first for a solo. Radivojevich builds a nice solo here, and this is the only tune he's on, so let's hear his solo into the start of a solo from Kochetova that takes off swinging with a lot of energy. After the climax of her solo, it resets to the intro idea again. It goes around the melody once more to an unexpected placid ending. Track 7 is Silence. This is a duet ballad for Kochetov and Kochetova that shows off his pleasing soprano sax tone. Depending on the musician, the soprano sax can sometimes be a timbre that we suffer through like a nasal car horn that can change pitch. Not the case for Max Kochetov, whose sound is really smooth and great. The intro here is quite slow in a 6-beat feel with sparse piano. It gains some more motion and rhythmic feel in the melody with Kochetova's chords. Let's hear it get started. Let's check out some of Kochetov's improvisations on this one as well. Kochetova gets a solo section from there before a short final sax melody section. Track 8 is R Dance. That's just the letter R with a period after it. Fabrizio Bosso is back for this one. It's got a straight beat feel with some interesting alternating piano chords on the 8-measure intro. The horn melody starts in unison and splits into harmony and then traded lines. The rhythm of the undulating bass changes up near the end, sounding like there are a couple of 3-beat measures mixed in. I'm not sure, but it's around 20 measures and then repeats. Let's check it out. And after the repeat of this part here, Basel is up for a solo. We skipped his solo on the first track, so let's keep listening and check him out on this tune. Kochetov follows, and then Hugo Loff has a fleet-fingered bass solo. They go around the melody section again and then vamp for Grabantinitz to get some drumming in before the end. Track 9 is Terminal 3, and Samuel Blazer returns on trombone for this tune. The drums started out for 4 measures with a straight beat. Piano and bass are in for an 8-measure intro with a neat ostinato figure together that continues under the melody, which has a repeating 8-measure idea for just sax. Blazer joins in on the middle section that has some meter change-ups, and then the first section comes again. After the melody, Kochetov continues on for a solo, followed by Blazer, and Hugo Loff gets another solo on bass here, and we haven't heard him yet, so let's check out the bass on this one into some drum build-up from Grabantinitz. Horns return to finish it up with some improvised trading at the end. And the album finishes up with the 10th track, Outro. It's like the intro with an old-time sound for just a single phrase to end the recording. In the notes that Antonio sent, there's an introduction from Max Kochetov that I'll read now. He says, "I can't help but wonder if the music I compose is jazz or not. And also, what is jazz nowadays? Has jazz died with modern styles, or has it been upgraded to 5G? Whatever the case may be, I think that traditional jazz has influenced all my compositions immensely. As much as I strive toward the modern, I am constantly going back to the roots. That's where I look for the answers, and that's where I always find them." So maybe that explains the retro intro and outro idea on this recording, sandwiching in the main tracks on the album. I found Kochetov's original compositions very much in the current of modern jazz that we're used to hearing today. There's a strong sense of melody in his tunes, but they break free from constrictive structures and also have interesting harmonies and time signature variety, mostly working with straight beat rhythmic ideas. His improvised solos explore and show a mature sense of phrasing and reach dynamic climaxes. The rest of the quartet is up to the task with fine piano work, both backing and in solos from Katarina Kochetova. Hugo Loff is versatile on bass, often working lines with the piano left hand along with other snappy propulsion, and Milos Grabantinits gets a lot of interesting tones out of his drum kit, and he can power up for some good climaxes as well. Two of the world's top trumpeters, Fabrizio Bosso and Alex Sipiagin, add excitement and their usual flair. It was my first time hearing trumpeter Ivan Radivojevich, but he makes a strong impression too, along with Samuel Blazer's trombone that makes a fun contrast of tones with soprano sax. There's a lot of engaging music on this recording.
Yeah, this album had a laid-back 1970s vibe overall to me. I think that's mostly because of the production, really, that I thought that. Kochetov makes his mark on all of the tracks and has a lot of soloists to bring a variety of tones and approaches to the recording. Of course, I was happy to hear Fabrizio Bosso play stylishly, yet with impressive virtuosity in his solos, and adult music favorite Alex Sipiagin shines in his flugelhorn solo on Sun, getting a trumpet-like tone when he plays out. I always think of the flugelhorn as having a more kind of burnished sound, but I felt like he got a real powerful sound out of it here.
He's one of those players who goes way up high on flugelhorn as well as trumpet.
Yeah. The soloists seem to inspire Kochetov to step out a bit when he's soloing on a track with one of his guests. And for me, that was the highlight of the album, the guest solos, and how Kochetov responded to them or set them up. I wasn't too happy about the frequent use of heavy reverb on a lot of the themes. I mean, everything, it sounds too, polished to me. I feel like it obscures, the honesty of the solos when you hear, that kind of polish to the production. Bossa solos have some reverb on them. The album has a sheen to it. I prefer the recording to be more present and in the room. But despite that, this is an appealing album with some really interesting solos, and I really like the interaction between the players and between the soloists.
Yeah, another one in Antonio Martino's Serbian wave of recordings. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
All right, next, pianist and composer Ramiro Zayas, along with the Basel Jazz Orchestra, Familia. This is on Club del Disco, and it came out on streaming on January 30th. Ramiro Zayas is an Argentinian pianist based in Berlin. He blends jazz, free improvisation, and Argentine music in his work. He has 3 previous recordings, Rio Interior from 2019, and Parte del Viaje from 2024, and Collector, that we talked about back in June of last year in episode 217, Image Collectors. That was a drumless sextet, and we'll hear some of the musicians from that recording as part of this recording, which is Zayas' first for large ensemble. And thanks to Ramiro for sending me a copy of the CD, which came out on December 15th, although, as I mentioned, it was released on streaming on January 30th. And interestingly, Collector, which was on a different label, seems to never have made it to streaming, or at least I can't find it anywhere. So you have to get that one on CD if you want to listen to it. The Basel Jazz Orchestra, or BJO, was established in 2023, made up of 18 professional musicians, all active on the Basel, Switzerland music scene, and I'll read through the list of names. And they come from all over the place, so if I mispronounce some names, please forgive me for that. Francesca Gaza, the conductor, Baptiste Stanek on tenor sax and bass clarinet, Joshua Schofield on lead saxophone. It doesn't say alto or tenor. Sarah El Hachimi on alto sax and flute, Charlotte Lang on bari sax and flute, Charlie Rose on tenor sax, Sebastian Greshuk on trumpet and flugelhorn, Bastian Rieser on the lead trumpet, Alvaro Ocon on trumpet, Tobias Schneider on trumpet, Lucas Reinert on lead trombone, Yossi Itzkovich on trombone, Fernando Brox, who we've heard before, on flute, and it says also trombone. Didn't know that he played trombone.
Hey.
Lucas Wurz on the bass trombone, Martin Juhasz on drums, Michał Skierwinski on guitar, Gianni Narduzzi on bass, and Ramiro Zayas on piano, and almost all of the compositions. I'll point out the one that's not his. And we also have a vocalist here, Brazilian singer Joyce Bastos. The recording gets underway with the title track, Familia, and Ramiro says in his notes, this is a dedication to the BJO and a nod to the music of Argentinian pianist and composer Guillermo Klein, who has been a huge influence on him. Lightness, some dance, a melody with rhythmic turns. If it works, it should say something about community and gratitude, he writes. This is rhythmic and happy sounding. Clicky drums and guitar chords get joined by flute and more winds as the melody layers over the bubbling rhythm. We hear some piano, too. Let's take a listen to this recording get started. And that phrase comes again into a new section with a bit of swing. Joshua Schofield has an alto sax solo feature on this tune, so let's check out some of his playing. As he goes on, more backing lines with warm trombone tones come in. The arrangement builds up thickly, and the melody returns, passed around to different sections with muted trumpet tones. The ending comes down to guitar and percussion like the opening and a final piano figure. There's a lot going on in these arrangements, so my samples will really be just like snapshots. You really have to hear everything to get a sense of the development of ideas in the arrangements. Track 2 is La Cosecha, The Harvest. Ramiro writes, I had already recorded this piece on Parte del Viaje, though it was originally written for a big band and later adapted to a smaller group. Again, a clave runs through it with a melody inspired by Wayne Shorter's Nefertiti. Zayas starts this out at the keyboard with an even rhythm. There's a pulsing feel to the melody line on trumpet and warmer tones below, but also flutes and muted trumpet. Those repeated ringing bass notes carry it to a new section with trumpet and then a build-up of the full ensemble. Sebastian Greszuk is the featured soloist on this one, sounds like on flugelhorn. Let's hear some of his playing. There's an ominous section with trombones and muted trumpet stabs over an insistent rhythm in the piano notes, and then bass drum before Greszuk is back with more lines. The full ensemble works to a climax that comes down in cymbals to a mysterious ending with muted trumpets. Track 3 is Mares Seas. Zayas writes that when he wrote this tune, he couldn't get the Barbara song from Gil Evans's 1964 album out of his head. It's a mysterious mood, and Wayne Shorter's solo stayed with him for a long time. And he says he had recorded this piece before, but here he could finally shape it the way that he had always imagined. This has a mysterious beginning with piano, and I'm not sure what. It sounds like synthy guitar toned with a delayed attack.
That's what I thought too, yeah.
Before winds layer in. A more full ensemble line begins about a minute in. Let's listen up until that point. Katie Webster is featured on alto sax on this one with a unique eerie tone covering both high and low registers of the horn. Let's hear the end section. Guitar tones synced with piano come in for a section to more lines from Webster that the full ensemble builds up around, and the ending becomes peaceful. Track 4 is called Feed the Cat, and Zayas writes, 2 melodies, a groove, a restless pulse, a rhythmic pattern runs underneath, and a shadowy line in the back. No cats were fed during the recording. This one is pretty caffeinated with brass and sax lines intersecting over a rocky drum beat. A section of angular guitar lines leads to more horn lines and soft rhythmic piano notes that work into a quiet solo from Zayas. Let's hear the tune get started. Let's hear some of Zayas' playing that gets trombone backing of sinking pitches, creating a kind of delirium. There's also what the notes call a hungry baritone outburst from Charlotte Lang, and there's a fuller ensemble build-up with guitar and muted trumpets to open brass at the ending. Track 5 is an open question. Zayas writes about this, a motif that sounds like a question, at least to me, but no one replies. The piece leans on a clave, though it appears more like an undercurrent than a pattern in the foreground. And Zayas starts it on piano, asking the question, winds pulse in mysteriously. Let's hear it get started. It builds slowly through lots of different lines and layers of winds. I'll sample from a major event when the drums drop out and a rhythmic sax line brings in Charlie Rose on a tenor sax solo. gets some stabbing horn backing, and then works up to a bombastic climax. It then gets quiet with just the sax and piano trickles to a pause. Sustained wind notes with some pulsing dissonances finish up the tune. Track 6 is Autopsychografia. I guess in English you would say autopsychography. This is written by Catalan saxophonist Gianni Gagliardi, and it's based on a poem by Fernando Pessoa, the Portuguese poet. Zayas writes that Gagliardi once asked him to arrange it, and he liked it so much that he decided to record it. A nice blend of winds makes a pretty and tranquil opening, bringing in Brazilian singer Joyce Bastos. Let's hear it. Very nice singing and arranging. A little brass build-up brings in Alvaro Ocon on a thoughtful trumpet solo that we'll take a listen to as well. And the brass build up to a return of Bastos' vocals. Very lush arranging in this one. Track 7 is Argento, and Zayas writes that Argento is slang for Argentine, but also points to an attitude, an energy, a way of living that's hard to put into words. You have to be there to understand it. And he says the melody brought him back to songs from his childhood. Interesting blends of winds float over a heartbeat like bass pulse and drums. There's a nostalgic sense to some of the melody lines and buzzing trumpet mutes. On this one, let's also check out some of Fernando Brooks's flute solo. Michał Skierwinski follows with a guitar solo. The next section has some interesting lines with full ensemble phrased together that build up tension while the low brass separates underneath. That leads to a final melody section with sax and the ensemble to a nicely arranged ending. And the recording ends up with track 8, The Early Hours. Zayas writes that for years he was almost obsessed with Kenny Wheeler's opening from his large ensemble album. At some point he tried to recreate that sound as a game, and it became his first big band piece, and in the end it turned into a tribute to Wheeler. This has a lushly arranged rubato opening with just winds. Build it up warmly from there with faint drum brushes. The horns are gone for the next section, featuring Michał Skierwinski's guitar over the sparse rhythm section trio. Let's hear some of that as well. Horns return with a soft improvised sax solo from Baptiste Stanek on the way to the ending. And that's the recording. There's a lot of dense and complex arranging on Familia that isn't easy listening, but in balance there are some really beautiful moments, like in the final tune we just heard, The Early Hours, and on Autopsychographia. Ramiro Zayas is really painting with tone colors here. And if you're a fan of large ensemble jazz like recordings by Kenny Wheeler and Gil Evans, there will be a lot to enjoy here. Arranging for a large jazz ensemble isn't easy, and Zayas has done impressive work with his first effort. The different layers and combinations of instrumental sounds will take more than one listen to get inside of. The solos are all unique, but serve the composition and development of the arrangements rather than standing out. It's sometimes challenging and sometimes soothing, and I'm enjoying it more each time I have a listen to this recording.
This really is an album that has to grow on you, I think. I mean, it's appealing the first time, but it gets deeper and deeper as you listen to it more and more often. I thought it really set an atmosphere on the first lesson, and the atmosphere differs from track to track, but it's mostly calming and has like this kind of lounge-like 1950s kind of style. I was kind of imagining Cocktails when I was listening to this, but I think there's actually more depth to it, too. I mean, I don't want it to sound like it's just like entertainment music. There's more there. But I'd say it's more of a cocktail album than a whiskey album. Let's just say that. I'm specifically thinking of tracks like Autopsychographia, but there are more disturbing tracks like An Open Question with its 12-tone-like harmony, which seems to come into line as more traditional harmony comes into the track as it goes on. The recording is slickly produced, and the rhythm especially comes through with solidity when it's there. A lot of this music just sort of drifts, sort of like almost like the wind is blowing it. It sounds kind of modal at times too. Some tracks like the album ending The Early Hours have a floating quality from the brass and winds with only minimal rhythm set by the drums. I'd say this is a good one to listen to with your significant other and the cocktail of your choice, but maybe an open question you might want to listen to by yourself. I liked it, though.
I like that he's using flutes and all the muted trumpets and things like that for different colors.
It's sort of unusual in a jazz record, so I was kind of happy to hear that myself.
You don't hear enough of that today.
Right.
All right, one more. Baierbaiao on the Hipjazz label from vibraphonist Wolfgang Lackerschmidt and the Brazilian Trio. This came out January 30th, and Hipjazz doesn't have any information on this recording yet on their homepage, and I can't find much anywhere else, so I had to pick up the basics here and there about the compositions and musicians, but there's no recording or engineering credits available yet. Wolfgang Lackerschmidt was born in Tegernsee, Bavaria in 1956. He's been a vibraphone virtuoso and composer since the 70s. He's played on more than 100 recordings and with jazz legends such as Chet Baker, Lee Konitz, Larry Coryell, Buster Williams, Paquito de Rivera, and many more. I first heard him on the Ballads for Two recording with Chet Baker from 1979, and then I was able to find some of his newer recordings. There's a prior collaboration with the Brazilian Trio on the 2019 EP album Studio Concert for Headphones, and way back in episode 16, in May of 2021, we discussed Summer Changes on Dot Time Records.
We were so young then.
Yeah, a long time ago. All right, so this recording, Wolfgang Lackerschmidt on the vibraphone and mostly his original compositions. The Brazilian Trio, who records on their own, is composed of Helio Alves on piano, Nilson Mata on bass, and Duduca da Fonseca on drums. The recording gets underway with a Lackerschmidt original composition, Chicken Shock. And Lackerschmidt gets an ostinato figure going for 4 measures that Mata's bass picks up on for another 8 measures for an intro with some piano and vibes improv. The minor melody is an AAB 24-measure construction taken together by vibes and piano on the A section, with Lackerschmidt taking the B that brightens up a bit. Let's check this out. The whole thing repeats from the bass ostinato intro idea. Alves solos first with some fun chromatic ideas into snappy figures. Let's check out Lackerschmidt's cool solo on this one. nice melodic ideas, and I like how he mutes the bars sometimes. That's a cool effect. Once more through the melody, finishes it up. Track 2 is another Lackerschmidt original, Entrada. This is a fun tune with a 40-measure melody in an AABCA pattern. Speedy unison lines on the piano and vibes give way to drum fills on the A sections, and the middle features Mata's bass. The end of the melody breaks into Lackerschmidt's vibe solo. Lackerschmidt finishes up his solo with the melody line into Alves' solo, so let's hear that and some of the piano solo on this one. Very creative and playful. Da Fonseca gets a drum solo on this one too, before another time through the melody. Track 3 is Ilana Gur, I assume in tribute to the Israeli artist and designer, also an original by Lackerschmidt. A minor waltz with a 32-measure melody. Lackerschmidt takes the first repeating section and Alves gets the focus from the middle before Lackerschmidt's back and continues on into a solo. Alves gets a solo on this one too, and I'll leave you to check out the solos on your own. Track 4 is called Picturing Mozart. It's a Lackerschmidt original with melody by Mozart, and Mike figured this one out before I got to it.
Yeah, this wasn't an easy one to figure out either. It's not Mozart's most famous melody, but it is from the Magic Flute, and it is the Tamino's aria Dies Bild nicht ist bezaubernd schön, which is what Tamino sings when the Queen of the Night's three serving ladies kind of give him a picture of Pamina. So the Picturing Mozart title sort of was a little clever giveaway there.
That means what? This portrait is enchantingly beautiful.
Yes. There's a great word. Zauber is magic, so bezaubernd would be, enchanting, I guess, in this case.
Yeah, you sent me a link with Placido Domingo singing this.
Yeah.
This is kind of different here.
It's very different here. That's also why it was hard to identify.
But I think Mozart may have played it like this himself if he had ever gotten a chance to visit the beach in Brazil. Let's take a listen. Schmidt and Alves trade off lines, working to simultaneous improvisations. Let's check out some of their joyful playing together. And back to the melody from there, from one Wolfgang to another.
Yeah, he really peps that melody up, I have to say, from the original opera. Even in the more leaner, like period instrument versions, it's not this fast. And it's not this lively either.
Track 5 is another Lackerschmidt original, and we'll slow things down and put it on cruise control. This one is slow and dreamy. Bass and piano ostinato gets going on the 8-measure intro. The melody is in an A-B-A shape of 8, 4, and 8 measures, with Alves taking the middle section. The ostinato puts you on cruise control, but there are some neat harmonic surprises on the way. Schmidt continues on for a solo, and Alves picks up on his last note for a solo that shows off a great light touch. Let's hear some of that. tasty. Track 6 is the title track, Baierbaiao, also a Lackerschmidt original. Put on your seatbelt for the speedy melody lines in unison on this one. Lackerschmidt gets it started into the intro, and the main melody is in an AABA shape with 16 measure sections. After the second A, they go around the final 4 measure vamp once more. Nice finesse on the cymbals from Da Fonseca, and Mata has a throbbing samba pulse going on in the bass. Is up first for a rhythmically playful piano solo. He finishes up with the speedy melody lick, and the tempo dissolves into a rubato start for Lackerschmidt's solo that takes off again with some energetic bass and drums. Things dissolve again into a solo from Da Fonseca, so let's hear his tom-focused solo on this one. Things gradually gel together into a final time through the melody. Now we're going to get some original compositions from each member of the trio, starting with one from Nilsson Mata, Aguas Brasileiras. This is a dreamy rubato vibes and piano opening that Alves brings a line out of into Mata's ballad melody. Lackerschmidt joins in on the way. It sounds like 24 measures in total. I'll start the sample from about 30 seconds in so we can hear more of the melody. Lackerschmidt continues on with a gentle solo, Alves also shows a light touch on this one in his solo. Mata takes a short melody section for himself at the end. I'll leave you to check out the solos on this one. Track 8 is composed by Da Fonseca, Manhattan Style. This one gets started with an improvised bass solo from Mata. Alves comes in with a 28-measure melody, and then Lackerschmidt and Alves both get solos. Let's hear it get started. Fonseca gets a solo here on his own tune as well, so let's check that out. Vibes and piano both work the melody to a series of holds to finish it up. And the recording ends up with track 9, an original by Helio Alves, Bebe. Alves starts this out solo in rubato. He makes it more rhythmic, and bass and drums join in, and the groove changes up as they go along. Lackerschmidt joins in, the meter changes to a waltz feel, so let's check out a little bit of that as well. Alves is off on a solo from there, followed by Lackerschmidt. They get back to the melody with some fun interaction before a dreamy ending. This is a really joyful sounding recording. Wolfgang Luckerschmidt's compositions have instantly likable melodies, and they fit the great rhythmic atmosphere provided by the Brazilian trio with samba and a little swing. Luckerschmidt has great technique, and his improvised solos never run out of melodic ideas. Helio Alves matches up his fleet fingers on a lot of unison, speedy melody lines, and his solos have a lot of variety, from a soft touch to rhythmically playful, exciting ideas. Nilson Mata and Duduka da Fonseca provide the rhythmic propulsion and have some spots to stand out in solos too. All three members of the trio get a composition in the program as well. Great musicianship and really enjoyable tunes from start to finish on this recording.
Yeah, and upbeat and a pretty cheerful record, too. Also, Luckerschmidt is a pretty melodic player for the most part. He thinks melodically in his solos, at least. All of the solos are well-shaped, also when they consist of a lot of figuration. He varies his tone a bit during the recording, mostly going for short to no sustain on the vibraphone. I liked his overall presence on the album. The Brazilian trios sound great, with Nilson Mata and Duduka de Fonseca an active rhythm section. Mata providing mobile bass lines, always moving on the bass. I really like that kind of texture. And Fonseca miraculously staying busy and intricate, yet never getting in the way. There's some magic in there, some voodoo happening. I don't know.
Brazilian blood, yeah.
Yeah. Fonseca's solos are also a bit of an anomaly, lightly played, yet high-powered. The power must be coming from the rhythm.
Yeah.
Helio Alves plays stylishly on the piano, providing some rhythmic impetus and soloing appealingly, and also with a good sense of melody. This is a very melodic album for the most part. The music is all immediately appealing, and the more upbeat tracks have a breezy feel to them. Extra points for choosing a Mozart theme that isn't immediately familiar for track 4, picturing Mozart. And this is an album to hear, enjoy, and at moments even challenge.
If you're in the northern hemisphere like we are, and tomorrow's going to be a bleak winter day here.
Oh boy, that's right, yeah.
Some snow falling. Put this one on and you'll feel warm right away.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be putting something else on simply because we got to get started on next week's recordings.
That's right. We're recording a day early this week and next week as well, just to accommodate some schedule changes. And that means we haven't really had a lot of time to look over the new releases that came out over the weekend. They usually start on Friday, and I'm still checking them out into Saturday, and it's Saturday night here. I think we've pretty much decided on a program.
I've got my program, and I'm looking at what I've chosen, and it's basically the same program as this week, except the different albums. First, we have an Italian Baroque album. This is the Greco brothers, Rocco and Gaetano Greco. You ever meet an Italian named Rocco? Hey, Rocco.
Yeah.
They don't use that name anymore. Anyway, this is works for violoncello, bass violin, and keyboard. So that should be pretty interesting. New sound. Then second, again, I have Schumann. We heard Schumann cello works today, with Schumann and Moscheles. Mm-hmm. But this is going to be piano works by Nikolai Lugansky. This album is making a lot of waves, and I really wanted to hear it. So it's a major release, and it's also highly touted, so I think we need to hear it. And that'll be the one I hear tomorrow, because it's very long, too. It's an hour and 24 minutes, so good for a snowy day. And then finally, for the contemporary work, I have another American composer, Augusta Reed Thomas, her new album Soul, which is miscellaneous orchestral chamber, all sorts of works on this with various artists on it. That's on the Nimbus label. And that's what we'll be talking about next week in Classical.
All right. Sounds good. On the jazz side, we're going to start out with one from Da Vinci Jazz. This is called Axis Duo. It's sax and guitar, Gianni Verone and Alessandro Chiappetta. And they're going to be doing mostly familiar jazz tunes arranged for this duo. I think we'll have some interesting insight into familiar material. Then a piano trio by a really phenomenal pianist, James Fernando. It's called Philly 3 on Spring Garden Records. And finally, a drum-led recording from Tobias Fraunhofer called Dragon Boat, and that's going to feature Alex Sipiagin again on the trumpet. So that'll be interesting. That's on Leica Records. All three of these just came out yesterday.
Fantastic.
As always, I'll have all of these recordings, classical and jazz, up on our Deezer playlist, which will be published a couple hours after this episode is published, and I'll put a link to it on our Facebook page as well. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. Anything else to close out this episode 246, Mike?
Well, I think instead of watching the Winter Olympics, I'll just be listening to wintry music.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
All right, that'll wrap things up for this week. We'll be back again next week with episode 247. So until then, keep listening. We'll see you again next time.